The magnolia rooftop, and the silent past. The rooftop glittered with a golden light as violinists played beneath a silk canopy. At the center, Cole Radford, the billionaire hotel magnate with a reputation built on charm and ruthless expansion, raised a champagne glass. His graying hair caught the amber glow of the sunset, and a quiet hush fell over the elite crowd. "To new beginnings," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "and to the kind of love that makes us brave enough to start over." The crowd cheered, glasses clinked, and by his side, Sierra Monroe, dazzling in her ivory gown, kissed his cheek. Cameras captured the moment as if history were being written. After all, she had been his wife's best friend, and now she was his future wife. On the surface, it was a fairy tale of second chances, golden vows, and a man who refused to live in the past. But a past that isn't buried can still breathe. Across the street, parked silently on the furthest corner of the Magnolia Circuit, a long black limo was idling. Inside, a woman sat motionless. Her name was Elise Taylor. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Her eyes were fixed on the rooftop. She could see Cole raise Sierra's hand for the cameras. She remembered that hand. It used to hold hers in shared grief. "I'll never let anything hurt you," Sierra had promised her. In the back seat, 4 small children stirred in their sleep, in soft matching coats, their faces nestled together. 2 had curled up against each other. The other 2 were lulled by the hum of the engine. Elise reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Thick, expensive, cream-colored. The wedding invitation had arrived anonymously, a gift or a warning. She traced the embossed names with her finger. Cole Radford and Sierra Monroe. Cole had no idea that the past had parked just outside his spotlight. He laughed on cue. He posed with investors and celebrities. He kissed Sierra again, all perfectly timed for the PR team documenting the romance of the year. And yet, beneath his polished exterior, something stirred. A flicker. A shadow. Elise's voice whispered in his memory. "The truth doesn't stay buried, Cole. It just waits." A valet walked past the limo and paused to look inside. Elise slowly turned her head. The window lowered an inch. "I'm not here yet," she said, her tone like marble. "He'll know when I am." Then she rolled up the window and looked toward the rooftop one last time. The best friend's guilt. The gala was just beginning. Sierra Monroe smiled for the cameras as if she were born to be adored. Her hand clung to Cole's with practiced ease. Her white gown was a whisper of elegance against the gold-lit skyline. Everything about her screamed perfection, except for the invisible tension knotted beneath her ribs. The night was flawless. She was marrying a millionaire. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about the woman who wasn't there. Elise. She and Elise had once shared everything. College nights, heartbreaks, even matching tattoos during a wild summer in Ibiza. Sierra had held Elise's hand during her wedding to Cole. She had stood behind her, dressed in lace and tears, when Elise lost her first child. She had promised to stay close, to protect her. Now she wore the ring Elise once wore. And the silence between them had stretched for 3 years. "Are you okay?" Cole asked, leaning in to brush his lips against her temple. His breath smelled faintly of champagne and ambition. "You're tense." "Just cold," she replied, with a smile that felt like glass. Cole nodded and turned to greet another guest. Sierra's gaze drifted past him, toward the shimmering sea below. She could almost feel Elise's presence in the wind, a ghost she couldn't name aloud. Earlier that day, Sierra had received a letter. No return address, just 3 words in a familiar handwriting. "Did you break me?" It was now folded neatly at the bottom of her clutch, next to her lipstick. She excused herself from the reception and slipped into the suite's dressing room, her heart pounding. Inside, she locked the door and pulled out the note again. No signature, no return address. But she knew. Elise's handwriting was burned into her memory. She had once written birthday cards, late-night confessions. The vows Sierra had helped Elise write for her wedding to Cole. A sudden knock startled her. "Sierra!" Cole's voice on the other side. She tucked the letter back into her purse. Just a minute. She looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked back with perfectly lined lips and eyes that had seen too much. This was not regret. It was dread. Because if Elise had written, it meant she wasn't finished. And Sierra knew something else. Elise never warned twice. She opened the door, returned to the party, and linked arms with Cole. The cameras resumed their work, but now her smile didn't reach her eyes either. The price of space. Across town, the limo remained silent. Elise held her phone. On the screen, an unsent message with a simple line. He should see what he left behind. Her thumb hovered over the send button. Not yet. The house was silent. Too silent for the argument that still echoed in Elise's chest. 3 years ago, they lived in a modern estate outside Napa. The vineyards curved around their land like promises. Elise had thought they were building a life, a family, something rooted. But that morning, Cole stood on the edge of the nursery under construction, arms crossed, his voice cold. "I can't do this," he had said. Elise's hands trembled over the tiny onesie she was folding. "What do you mean? We planned this. You said—" "I said a lot of things," he cut in. "But I didn't mean this. I didn't mean now." She stared at him as if he were speaking another language. He looked at her like she was a stranger with expectations he couldn't meet. "I just need space," he added. "Space?" Her voice cracked. "I'm 6 months pregnant, Cole." He rubbed his jaw, refusing to look at her belly. "You'll be fine. You always are." That phrase shattered her. He left the same day. No slamming doors, no dramatic speeches, just a silent departure, a packed travel bag, and a vague promise to fix things. What Elise didn't know was that he was already texting someone else. She found out 2 weeks later. A friend sent her a photo. Cole was at a Coast fundraiser, wine glass in hand, arm around Sierra. Sierra, who had stopped calling her. Sierra, who had ignored her as soon as Elise started showing. Sierra, who now looked at her husband the way Elise used to. The betrayal felt surgical, precise, as if it had been planned. But Elise didn't scream, didn't chase him. She let the silence grow. She gave birth alone. 4 hours of labor, no name next to hers on the hospital forms, no flowers, no calls, just the nurse whispering, "Quadruplets. That's rare. You're strong." Elise didn't feel strong. She felt buried. Still, she survived. She raised them. 1 bottle, 1 midnight cry at a time. She rebuilt a life from pain, memory, and resilience. And as her babies grew, she told them stories. Not of princes and castles, but of truth. Of a man who left, and a woman who didn't break. Back in the present, Elise sat in the limo and looked at the invitation again. Her thumb traced Sierra's name, the one that used to sign her birthday cards. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for the truth, and to show Cole what space had become. 4 little breathing truths he could never run from again. The silent arrival. The Valletta mansion buzzed with final preparations. Bouquets were double-checked. The string quartet rehearsed beneath the hanging lights, and the wedding planner circulated like a polite tornado. But upstairs, behind a locked door, Sierra was alone in her dressing gown, looking into the mirror. She hadn't slept. Her eyes told a story no concealer could hide. Cole had left the rehearsal dinner early, claiming an investor call from Tokyo had pulled him away. But she knew better. He was hiding something. Again. This time it wasn't subtle. His hands had trembled slightly while pouring champagne. His laugh had come a half-second too late, and she'd caught him looking at a woman through the ballroom window. A woman he never mentioned. She wore a black veil, sitting in the back of a parked limo. Sierra had seen enough to wonder. Now, brushing her hair in silence, she finally opened the envelope she had been too afraid to read the night before. It was still in her clutch, the one she had pretended not to notice at the gala. Inside, a single photo. Elise, sitting on a park bench, surrounded by 4 small children. A message scribbled on the back in delicate handwriting. "Do you still sleep at night?" Sierra's stomach churned. Elise had never been dramatic. She was surgical with emotion. When she struck, she did so in silence, with precision. A sudden knock startled her. "Sierra!" Cole's voice on the other side. "Can I come in?" She hesitated. A second. She tucked the photo under her vanity drawer, composed herself, and opened the door. He was freshly showered, in silk pajamas, barefoot, but his eyes were dark, tired. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Just tired," she replied. A pause. "Are you sure?" Sierra's eyes locked onto his. "Are you?" He didn't answer. She stepped aside, letting him in. They lay down together in silence, back to back. The space between them colder than it should have been. And outside, parked just beyond the estate gates, Elise watched the lights go out. Her children slept in the back seat, curled up like puzzle pieces. She whispered, "Tomorrow, they will see you." And she meant all of them. The uninvited guests, the morning sun rose slowly over the vineyard estate, bathing the grand mansion in a soft amber light. Birds flew over the Texas rooftop as guests began to arrive in designer cars and pastel dresses. A string quartet tuned beneath an ivy-covered arch. Champagne flowed from a marble fountain, as if everything was exactly as it should be, until the limo appeared. It wasn't flashy, not the kind rented for weddings. Matte black, silent engine, tinted windows. It pulled up slowly to the main door, just as the first round of guests was being ushered inside. The valet hesitated. The driver rolled down the window and handed him a folded note. "Not a guest. Deliver this inside." Inside the limo, Elise waited in silence. The children had begun to stir, rubbing their eyes, blinking at the morning. All 4 were dressed in pale cream and navy blue, their small shoes freshly polished. She had braided the girls' hair the night before and smoothed the boys' small ties. Now they blinked up at her, confused by their location. "Mommy," the youngest girl whispered, her voice husky with sleep. Elise turned, smoothing her daughter's hair. "We'll just wait a little longer, honey. It's almost time." Her voice didn't waver, but her hands, folded in her lap, trembled slightly. The valet delivered the note to the wedding planner, who read it and paled. She looked toward the towering double doors where Sierra stood, radiant in her gown, ready to walk down the aisle. The planner approached cautiously. "Miss Sierra," she whispered. "There's something outside. A car. A woman. She says she's not here to ruin anything, just to be seen." Sierra's heart stopped. She turned slowly. Cole, adjusting his cufflinks across the room, didn't notice at first, until Sierra's voice cut through to him like a blade. "Elise is here." His head snapped up. Time stopped. Outside, Elise stepped out of the limo. She carried no vengeance. She carried dignity. A soft navy blue dress, modest heels, no makeup except a slight sheen on her lips. Behind her, the children followed, still groggy, clutching stuffed animals in their hands. They stood together on the stone path just as the chapel bells began to toll. Every head turned. Elise lifted her chin and began to walk toward the open doors. And inside, Cole Radford's empire began to crack, under the weight of 4 small shadows he had spent 3 years trying to forget. The chapel showdown. The chapel was frozen. All heads turned as Elise crossed the threshold, holding the children's hands. The carpet beneath her shoes muffled her steps, but the silence she dragged behind her echoed louder than the organ pipes. Sierra stood at the altar, her veil raised, her bouquet trembling. Cole, already pale, didn't move. His jaw tightened. His hands flexed at his sides, as if he were choosing between running or lying. A guest whispered, "Is that?" The children looked wide-eyed at the petals on the floor. One knelt to pick one up and handed it to his sister. Elise. Sierra met her eyes, not with anger, but with something deeper, older, worn. "I didn't come to stop anything," Elise said, her voice even. Everyone could hear her. "I came so they could see it, so he could see them." The child nearest to her squeezed her hand tighter. Sierra slowly walked down the steps to the aisle. She passed Cole without looking at him. She stopped inches from Elise. She looked at the children. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 boys, 2 girls. The same eyes as Cole, the same slight smile crooked to the left. Sierra turned to Cole. "Do you know them?" Her voice was sharp, but broke on the last word. Cole didn't answer. She repeated it louder. "Do you know your own children?" The smallest girl stepped behind Elise's leg, frightened by the shouting. Elise knelt beside her and whispered something reassuring. The others just looked at Cole, expressionless, as if they didn't understand who he was, but could feel what he was not. Cole swallowed. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. The guests stared. Phones were raised. Someone started recording. Sierra's voice dropped to a whisper. "You told me you weren't ready for kids?" she said. "You lied." Cole finally spoke. "You don't understand." Sierra snapped. "Then make me understand." A long silence followed. Elise stood up again. She looked at Sierra, then at Cole. "I didn't ask for money," she said. "I didn't ask for a scene. I asked for a name. Their name." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "This is the paternity petition. The court date is set." She gently placed it on the front pew, turned back to the children, and gestured to them. "Come on, let's go." They obeyed quietly, obediently, without complaint. And as they left, the air behind them collapsed. A vacuum of dignity no lie could fill. Sierra looked at Cole one last time, and in that moment, her decision was made. The wedding never officially ended. There was no announcement, no orchestral cue, no explanation. Guests simply walked out, confused and unsettled, their designer shoes clicking on the marble like slow applause for a show that had broken the fourth wall. The bride had vanished into the bridal suite. The groom no longer looked like one. Cole sat alone on the altar bench, his tie loose, his collar unbuttoned, sweat gathering under his impeccable suit. In front of him, the folded petition envelope Elise had left that, unopened, untouched, like poison. Outside, the limo was already gone. Elise hadn't wasted time. A quick turn of the key, 4 children buckled up again. Doors closed, the soft hum of the engine. No theatrics, no goodbye. A photographer tried to follow them. Nora, Elise's old friend and Sierra's former maid of honor, blocked them at the gate. "No photos of the kids," she said. "You had your drama. Leave the rest." Nora's presence had been unnoticed all day. She hadn't been invited, but she knew Elise was coming, and she knew why Sierra had never invited her to the wedding, because she had once been the glue between the 3 of them. Elise, Sierra, Cole. But glue can only hold what isn't broken. Upstairs, Sierra looked at herself in the gold-framed mirror, mascara streaked beneath her lashes. Her wedding dress now felt like a costume. She remembered trying it on and whispering, "I feel like someone knew." Now she felt like someone had been played. A soft knock on the door. "Cole." She didn't speak. "I didn't expect her to show up," he said from the hallway. "I didn't expect any of this." Sierra stood up, her hands gripping the edge of the vanity. "You didn't expect the truth?" A pause. "She said she was unstable. That she left you?" "She did." He lied again. "She left you pregnant with 4 children." That silence lasted longer. Finally, Cole spoke. "It wasn't supposed to matter anymore. We were supposed to start clean." Sierra turned toward the door, her voice low, decisive. "There's no such thing as clean, not when you build on rot." She locked the door. Downstairs, Nora stood by the fountain, watching as everything burned from the inside. She pulled out her phone and dialed. A voice answered. "She's headed back," Nora said. "And he's unraveling." "Good," the voice replied on the other end of the line. Because Elise hadn't just come to be seen. She had come to finish something that had started long before the toast. The survivor's coffee, the hotel lobby bar, was quiet at noon. No music, just soft sunlight filtering through the tall windows and the slow clinking of glasses being polished behind the counter. Sierra sat alone at a corner table, no makeup, her hair still up from the day before. In front of her, an untouched champagne flute, left over from what should have been a celebration. Elise arrived 10 minutes late, not because she wanted to seem powerful, but because one of the children had a nosebleed in the car and she refused to walk in stained. She entered with no makeup, no entourage, and no hesitation. Just the quiet fire of a woman who had survived what no one saw. Sierra stood up but didn't smile. Elise didn't expect her to. They sat down. A long silence passed. Finally, Sierra spoke. "Did you know he would never tell me?" "I didn't come to tell you," Elise said. "I came so he would see them." Sierra nodded. "And?" "He didn't." Sierra looked down at the table. "He told me you cheated on him, that he caught you with someone else, that he was heartbroken." Elise let out a quiet laugh, more breath than voice. "He's always the victim in his own stories." Another pause. Sierra hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" Elise nodded. "Why didn't you try to ruin him? You could have done it years ago." Elise looked her in the eyes. "Because I thought maybe he'd seek them out on his own. Someday." She leaned in, her voice firm but not angry. "He never did." The weight of that truth landed harder than any slap. Sierra swallowed the knot in her throat. "I thought I stole him from you," she whispered. Elise tilted her head gently. "You didn't. He gave himself away." For a moment, they were just 2 women who had loved the same man and paid for it in different ways. Sierra reached into her purse and pulled out her engagement ring. She slid it across the table. "Do me a favor," she said. Elise looked confused. "Give that to your daughter someday, so she knows what she's worth and what she's not." Elise stared at it. "She doesn't need reminders of him." "No," Sierra said. "She needs reminders of you, of what you walked away from and what you stood up to." Elise said nothing, but for the first time in a long time, her eyes filled with tears. Sierra stood up. She adjusted her coat and looked back once before leaving. "I'm sorry he made us think we were enemies," she said. Elise watched her disappear into the light beyond the door. "Not enemies. Not anymore. Just survivors." The viral truth. The news broke at 7:14 a.m. Not through a press conference, not a tabloid, but a viral leak. A grainy security video. Time stamped. Location: San Diego Wellness Center. Date: 4 years ago. The footage was short, less than a minute, but it didn't need to be longer. It showed Cole Radford entering a private clinic in a tailored suit and sunglasses. He handed an envelope to the reception nurse. She opened it, wide-eyed, and nodded. Then he turned and walked out. Not once did he look down the hallway behind him, where Elise had just been wheeled into the delivery room. There was no audio, but the silence in the video said everything, and it spread like wildfire. News anchors scrambled. Social media accounts exploded. Radford. Reveal trended by noon. Every major news outlet ran the same headline. Billionaire bribed clinic to scrub records of his own children. Cole's PR team denied it. They called the footage misleading, lacking context, an invasion of privacy. But the damage was done. Sierra didn't talk to the press. She didn't need to. Her silence became its own statement. Board members of Radford Hotels called an emergency session. Stock plummeted. Investors pulled out. By midnight, the empire Cole had taken 15 years to build had begun to crack. Meanwhile, Elise sat on her living room floor in a modest rental across town, folding laundry next to 4 small children playing with toy dinosaurs. She didn't turn on the TV. But Nora sat on the sofa, laptop open, watching the media frenzy grow. "You could sue him," Nora said, without looking away. "You could own half of what he has next month." "I don't want what he has," Elise said softly. "I just wanted what he took to come to light." Nora leaned back. "You're the scariest kind of woman, you know." Elise smiled faintly. "No, I'm just the kind who remembers everything." Outside, the sun was setting. A gentle breeze moved through the open window. One of the children, Arden, brought her a drawing. It was crude, childish, scribbled in crayon, but clear. 5 stick figures holding hands. One wore a crown. "Am I that one?" she asked, pointing to the crown. Arden nodded. "You're the queen." Nora watched from across the room, her eyes wet. In a world where men like Cole built glass towers, some women built kingdoms with crayons. Courage and silence. The kind of kingdom no scandal could ever destroy. The quiet aftermath. The black limo pulled away from the courthouse as silently as it had arrived. No driver interview. No waves from the windows. Just the soft hum of tires rolling over rain-slicked pavement. Inside, Elise sat in the back with her children gathered around her, each buckled in, each clutching a stuffed toy handed out by Nora before their departure. The twins were asleep again. Arden and Mira looked out opposite windows, quiet in a way only children could be when the chaos was adult-sized. There were no tears, no drama, just the soft, heavy silence of a story concluded. Elise leaned back, resting her head on the seat, her eyes half closed. Not from exhaustion, but from release. This wasn't victory. This was relief. Outside, flashes popped as paparazzi crowded for one last shot. A lone reporter banged on the window, calling her name, holding up a microphone as if the right question could break her. She didn't answer. She had said everything without saying a word. Meanwhile, not far away, inside the penthouse office of his flagship hotel, Cole Radford watched it all on a muted screen. His tie was loose, his eyes sunken. Around him, assistants quietly packed boxes, pretending not to see the man unraveling in the center of a once perfect empire. On the screen, the limo rounded a corner and vanished from view. Cole stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city he once owned. In the glass's reflection, he looked older. Not just defeated, but exposed. He picked up a framed photo from the shelf, a picture of him and Sierra smiling on the yacht where he had proposed. He looked at it for a long time. Then he turned it face down. Inside the limo as Elise opened her eyes. The sun had broken through the clouds. A sliver of golden light touched her hand, where it rested on Arden's knee. The driver, a quiet man who hadn't spoken since picking them up, caught her eye. In the rearview mirror. "Where to now, ma'am?" he asked. She thought about it. Not a hotel, not a press conference, not a lawyer's office. Just home, drive, she said softly, where they stop asking questions. The driver nodded. As the limo curved onto the coastal highway, the skyline faded behind them. The world that once silenced her was now in the rearview mirror. And in its place, the sky, the waves, and the four small souls who would never again wonder who they were or who had tried to forget them. Elise looked out the window one last time, not for him, but for the girl she once was. The girl who had been abandoned, with nothing but the truth. She whispered, barely audible, "We made it." And this time, no one, no man, no lie, no empire could take it away. The crayon letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, no return address, just a single name written in block letters on the back. Arden. The envelope was soft, slightly crumpled, like paper gets when it's passed through too many small hands. On the front, Cole's name was misspelled. Cole. The L wobbled like an unsteady hand. It was delivered by courier. The concierge tried to give it to Cole personally, but he simply took it, nodded, and walked away. Upstairs, in his office, he stared at it for a long time. Then he placed it, unopened, on the edge of his desk, and left it there. Not out of fear, but something worse. Avoidance. Down the hall, Sierra paused in the doorway, watching. Her presence, once radiant and camera-ready, now felt subdued. Her engagement had dissolved in silence. No announcement, no public statement. Just silence. The same kind of silence she had once accused Elise of wearing as armor. She approached the desk hours later, when Cole had retreated to the terrace with a bottle of whiskey and the view of a city that no longer applauded him. Her eyes scanned the envelope. She didn't ask permission. She simply opened it. Inside was a folded page, the top corner torn, the crayon lines messy. There were 4 signatures. Arden, Mira, Cass, Leo, each name followed by a crooked heart. The message wasn't long. "Dear Mr. Cole, Mom says we don't need you, but we drew this so you remember us. We like pizza. Mira can spell butterfly now. Cass lost a tooth. Leo runs fast. Arden got a gold star. Goodbye." There was a drawing, too. 5 stick figures again, just like the one Arden had given Elise in an earlier chapter of their lives. Only this time, one figure stood outside the group. A sad face, a small question mark above its head. Sierra slowly folded the page. She slipped it back into the envelope and walked toward the kitchen. Cole didn't turn when she passed, but she said it anyway. Quiet, sharp, a cut wrapped in silk. "You were a storm." She raised the sunlight. He didn't reply. He wouldn't, because some truths are too unbearable to speak aloud, and some love letters are too innocent to be read by the guilty. The envelope remained on the desk for days, gathering dust. Long after Sierra had left, long after the world stopped whispering his name, and long after a woman named Elise taught 4 children that remembering where you came from doesn't require being claimed, only being loved. The penthouse balcony that once glittered under champagne lights was now silent. No more guests, no more camera crews, no more toasts. Just the silence of stale air and unopened windows. Across the room, the fireplace flickered on a timer, set years ago, when appearances mattered more than warmth. Now it crackled alone. Cole no longer lived there. He hadn't returned in weeks. Some said he was abroad. Others whispered of rehab, exile, reinvention. But no one truly knew. The light in the top floor window that once shone every night, announcing success, remained dark. and it was better that way. Down the coast, far from the echo of clinking glasses and press headlines, a beach town buzzed with everyday life. Elise was in a paint-splattered apron in a sunlit classroom, helping Arden mix blues and yellows to get the perfect ocean green. Cass was across the hall, learning to read. Mira was on a stool sculpting a clay bird. Leo was somewhere outside, already barefoot. They had stopped asking about him. Children sometimes do that, not because they forget, but because they make room for what stays. Elise no longer needed answers. She had laughter in the hallway, crayon hearts on the refrigerator, quiet moments at dusk when all four fell asleep without nightmares. That was justice, not an apology, just peace. She had never returned to the city, never answered the media calls, never watched Sierra's exit interview, because she didn't need to. She had become the kind of woman people can't erase. The town knew her by name now, Miss Elise, the one who brought her own paintbrushes, the one whose children never cried during storms. One Saturday, as golden light spilled through the windows, Nora arrived with cupcakes. They sat on the back porch as the children ran down the hill toward the ocean, their laughter floating on the wind. "Do they remember?" Nora asked softly. Elise didn't take her eyes off them. "They remember enough, and they forget what they need to." In the distance, Arden waved at a wave. Her face was lit with joy, not in spite of what came before, but because of what came after. A kind of survival that can't be taught, only witnessed. Nora smiled. The wind picked up, swirling hair, sand, and memory in the air. Far away, past the coast, the city skyline faintly flickered in the twilight. But it was too far away to matter now. Elise stood up, dusting the flour from her hands. "I think we're finally home," she said. And as the sun sank into the sea, four silhouettes danced against the undertow, their shadows long and unbroken. Because in the end, some empires fall in silence, and some women rise stronger than ever, even without saying a word. Epilogue. The Unbroken Line. 18 years after the time capsule was buried, the small coastal town was celebrating its annual arts festival. The air smelled of sea salt and freshly painted canvas. Michael Taylor, 25, the eldest of the quadruplets, walked through the crowds. He was a tall young man, with his mother Elise's steady gaze and a sharp, strategic mind, a talent he inherited from the father he never knew. He was now an architect, designing sustainable homes right here on the coast. His siblings were scattered across the festival, Arden selling her intricate clay sculptures, Mira performing poetry on a makeshift stage, and Cass and Leo managing the youth soccer tournament down by the beach. Michael stopped in front of a newsstand. The headline wasn't about the festival. It was about the sale of the former Radford Hotel's headquarters in Los Angeles, the massive glass tower Cole had once used as his throne. The building was being converted into public housing. The sale was a final, quiet end to that turbulent era. Michael paused, feeling the weight of the past he had studied, but never lived. He had seen the infamous security footage of his father's betrayal countless times. It was a required case study in his business ethics class. He understood the numbers, the control, the cowardice. He understood the mother who had walked away from it all. He had often wondered about his father. Cole had vanished completely after the scandal, never attempting contact, honoring the silent, final nature of the divorce and the paternity agreement. "Penny for your thoughts, Michael." Michael turned. Nora stood there, now the town's beloved community organizer, her eyes warm and knowing. "Just thinking about the building," Michael said, nodding toward the paper. "The final chapter. It's strange to think that my existence was once a line item on his balance sheet." Nora smiled, resting a hand on his arm. "Your existence, sweetheart, was the only thing that wasn't on his balance sheet. That's why he ran." I sometimes wonder why he never tried to contact us later. Not even a letter. Why such silence? Nora looked toward the ocean where Elise was sitting, sketching by the water's edge, serene and focused. Because your mother taught him the only lesson he couldn't afford to learn, the price of silence. By staying silent, she forced him to live with his choice every day. And by not demanding anything, she showed him that she had won the only thing that mattered. You four. Michael watched his mother. She looked up from her sketch pad, her face catching the sunlight, and smiled. It was a smile of deep, earned peace. Michael finally understood. His mother's greatest act of strength wasn't confronting Cole in the chapel. It was the silence she used afterward. It was the decision to walk away from the noise and build a life so full of light and roots that the shadow of the past could no longer reach them. He took a deep breath of the salty air. The past was an academic case study. The present was a warm, bright reality. He looked at Nora and nodded. I need to go. I promised Mira I'd set up the stage. As Michael walked toward the beach, Nora watched him, a figure tall and strong, untainted by the empire that once loomed over his name. Cole Radford had thought he was strong by walking away, but his son, Michael Taylor, was stronger. A quiet reminder that true courage isn't found in a towering skyscraper, but in the unwavering decision to stay and build a life worth living. The unbroken line of strength continued, a shadow from another past, too. 2 years after his graduation, Michael Taylor's career in sustainable architecture was thriving. He was recognized not just for his talent, but for the fierce ethical code he inherited from his mother. His firm's next big project, a major consulting contract to retrofit a disgraced tech magnate's former corporate headquarters in Silicon Valley. The magnate was none other than Alexander Hayes, the man from the other scandal, who had been rebuilding his life and image in quieter ventures after his own public fall from grace a decade earlier. Michael, unfazed by the name, flew to San Francisco to meet the client's representative. The meeting was held in a simple glass-walled office in a newly designed green building, a stark contrast to the luxurious penthouses Michael was used to seeing in his father's world. Michael walked in and stopped short. Sitting at the table, a man with piercing blue eyes and an air of quiet confidence that had replaced his old arrogance, stood up and extended his hand. Michael Taylor, the man said, his voice measured. I'm Alexander Vance. I'm taking over the operational direction for this project, working on behalf of Mr. Hayes. We need the best. Your mother's reputation precedes you. Michael shook his hand, his mind reeling. Alexander Vance, the man whose face was plastered next to the infamous quote, "If you have that baby, forget my number." He looked nothing like the cold-hearted tycoon of the headlines. He looked like a man who had fought a war and found peace. My mother? Michael asked, raising an eyebrow. Do you know Alara Taylor? Alexander's smile was slight, weighted with history. We know of each other. Our lives intersected, once, in a way that taught us both the same painful lesson about the true cost of control. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. In the elite, ethically compromised world they both navigated, certain stories became parables. Michael looked at Alexander, realizing that this man, too, had been a contemporary, perhaps even a casual acquaintance, of his father, Cole Radford. They were all threads of the same flawed, gilded tapestry. The reason we chose your firm, Michael, Alexander continued, leaning forward, is because we need transparency. We need a foundation built on truth, no compromises. Mr. Hayes and I learned the hard way that when the foundation is rotten, the whole structure eventually collapses. Michael looked at this man who had abandoned his own child, now advocating for a business built on integrity. He saw a mirror reflecting not his father, Cole, but a man who had fought his way back, much like his mother had. "We can build that foundation, Mr. Vance," Michael replied, his voice firm, meeting Alexander's eyes. "I assure you, I understand the importance of choosing to build, not destroy." Alexander nodded, his expression softening with something akin to respect, or perhaps recognition. "I believe you do, Michael. Let's build something that lasts." And so, the son of Elise Taylor began a powerful new professional relationship with the man who had nearly destroyed Alara Chen, the other main character's name in the earlier story. A new, unexpected chapter opened, proving that in their world, the painful past never truly disappears. It simply shifts into the boardroom, demanding a different kind of contract. Chapter 7. Echoes of Regret. The partnership between Taylor Design and Alexander Vance's team quickly evolved from a contractual agreement into an intense, shared mission. Michael was relentless. He challenged Vance's initial proposals, pushing for higher environmental standards and greater supply chain visibility, exactly the transparency Vance claimed to champion. One afternoon, Michael flew back to San Francisco for a project review. They were deep into blueprints, Michael pointing out a structural flaw in a recycled steel beam specification. The integrity of this choice, Michael argued, tracing a line on the schematic, is too volatile. The risk-reward ratio is unbalanced. We need to go with the domestic source, even if it costs 2% more. As you said, the foundation can't be rotten. Alexander leaned back in his chair, a rare, thoughtful look on his face. He wasn't annoyed by the pushback. He was studying Michael. He saw the same unwavering moral clarity that had once defined Alara Chen, the mother of his own son, Michael Hayes Vance, who was also named Michael in the original story. "You argue with the same conviction as a woman I once knew, Michael," Alexander murmured, his voice low. Michael met his gaze, unfazed. "I learned the hard way, Mr. Vance, that conviction is the only asset that holds its value, regardless of the market." Alexander gave a slight, acknowledging nod. He remembered the fierce conviction in Alara's eyes when she showed him his own son's drawing of a fountain. "Tell me about your family, Michael," Alexander asked, a sudden shift in tone. Michael paused, slightly uncomfortable with the personal turn. "I grew up on the coast with my 3 siblings, and my mother, Elise Taylor. She taught us to build things that last." He paused, then added matter-of-factly, "My biological father, Cole Radford, wasn't around." The mention of the name Cole Radford hit Alexander with the force of a physical blow. He remembered Cole, a rival, a fellow member of that insular world of reckless ambition. He realized the interconnected web of their gilded cage. He and Cole had both abandoned women, who then raised brilliant, resilient children, each named Michael, each embodying the integrity their fathers lacked. "I see," Alexander said quietly, resting his elbows on the table and folding his hands. He felt a wave of profound empathy for this young man, who was a mirror image of the son he was rebuilding a relationship with on the other side of the country. "You are relentless on integrity," Alexander noted. "It's admirable. It reminds me of my own son. He's also named Michael. He also grew up with a mother who taught him how to build a life out of disappointment." He didn't mention the words he had spoken to Alara Chen, the same words Cole had essentially spoken to Elise Taylor. "If you have that baby, forget my number." He didn't have to. The shame of that shared moral failure hung in the air, connecting the 2 men from different generations in an unexpected bond of regret. "Mr. Hayes and I," Alexander said, choosing his words carefully, "share a deep understanding of the need for true redemption. It's not about public image, it's about the foundation of the soul. That's what we're building here, a structure that cannot be corrupted by the lies of the past." Michael nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He saw the genuine humility in Alexander Vance, a quality rarely found in men of his stature. He realized that this contract was more than business. It was a tangible act of atonement. "Then we are aligned, Mr. Vance," Michael replied, a newfound depth in his voice. "Let's make sure this structure is unbreakable." The meeting ended on that note of mutual, earned respect. As Michael flew back, he realized that the past wasn't just a shadow in his own life. It was a shared trauma that was now unexpectedly funding his future. And for the first time, he felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that the sins of the fathers were, at least in this boardroom, being redeemed by the work of the sons. Chapter 8. Integrity is non-negotiable. The collaboration between Michael Taylor and Alexander Vance continued to flourish. Michael was brought into every strategic meeting, serving not only as the architectural consultant, but also as the ethical check. He carried the uncompromising sternness of someone who had witnessed breakdown and rebuilt from scratch. "We need to cut costs on the flooring materials in the main lobby area," a financial manager suggested during a meeting. "We can use a cheaper import alternative at far less." "No," Michael cut in instantly. "That imported material has documented links to child labor. Under the zero structure principles we agreed upon, we cannot use it." The finance manager looked at Alexander, expecting intervention. Alexander Vance, who once embodied ruthless cost-cutting, merely shrugged. "Michael is correct," Alexander said, his voice calm. "This project is about atonement. The cost of integrity is non-negotiable. Find a domestic supplier replacement." This public endorsement cemented Michael's position. After the meeting, Alexander invited Michael for coffee. "You walked away from a multi-million-dollar saving just to defend a flooring decision," Michael said, a mix of curiosity and respect in his tone. "Cole Radford or the Alexander Hayes of 10 years ago would never have done that." Alexander took a sip of his black coffee, his blue eyes looking directly at Michael. "You are right. Neither of those men would have," Alexander admitted. "They were more afraid of losing money than they were of losing their soul. I know that because I was one of them. We believed money would save us from the messiness of life. But the messiness, Michael, is life itself." He paused, looking at Michael with a moment of deep personal regret. "You seem different, Michael. Your father is Cole Radford, a man who lost everything over his own lies. You are the son of a woman who had to rebuild everything from zero. That usually breeds either deep resentment or blind ambition." "My mother taught me one thing," Michael said, looking out at the city skyline. "That our lives are not defined by where they began, but by where we choose to stand up." She didn't allow bitterness to be our legacy. Alexander smiled faintly, a rare, warm smile. "That is an admirable legacy. I, too, was fortunate to have a woman who forced me to face the truth, no matter the cost." Michael sensed the sincerity. He realized he and Alexander shared something beyond their names and their father's history, a shared healing enacted by strong women. Alexander stood up. "I want you fully involved in this project, Michael. Not just the design. Be our moral compass. If you see any sign of rot, however small, you have full authority to pull the plug." "I will," Michael promised. As Michael watched the wealthy man leave, not in a Porsche but a modest electric car, he realized that Alexander Vance's story might be one of the greatest acts of professional redemption he would ever witness. And he, the son of Elise Taylor, was an integral part of it. The truth had set Alexander free, and now it was funding Michael's career. The world truly was a complicated place.